My true story from Virginia. They locked me in the basement and faked my death to steal the house, but I recorded everything. They buried me with lies. I came back with proof. Mark, please, let me out. I do not want to die here. He paused at the bottom of the stairs, then laughed. You should be thanking me, Mom. I'll make sure you get a beautiful grave. I'll even write a speech. I'll honor your legacy by inheriting every piece of it. We do not need to call a doctor. If she dies, she dies. When she goes, we will hold a small memorial, then sell the house as fast as possible. No one asks where the old lady went, as long as she does not come back. They said it right above me, as if I were already a ghost, floating somewhere between the furnace and the rotting wood beams, their voices muffled by the floorboards, but not enough to hide the contempt. My son, his wife, and a third voice, a man I didn't recognize. Calm, professional, probably the lawyer they kept mentioning in the past few months, the one who never returned my calls. I was lying on the old cot in the basement. My breath was shallow, not from sleep, I hadn't slept in days, but from the medication they had slowly cut off. Heart pills, thyroid supplements, blood thinners. Gone. No more reminders, no more refills. They said I was forgetful, that I mixed things up, but they were the ones hiding the pill bottles, the ones turning off the lights a little earlier, locking the door a little tighter. I was not dead, but I was being prepared for it. The basement was cold, not bitter cold, but damp, creeping, the kind that gets into your lungs and stays there. The only light came from a flickering bulb over the washing machine. It had been left on, maybe by accident, or maybe they wanted me to see, to know, to feel every hour. I listened as my son Mark spoke again. She doesn't eat much anymore. She sleeps all day. It will be natural. Peaceful. Peaceful. This house was built with my blood. My husband and I laid the tiles ourselves in the summer of '78, when money was too tight for a contractor. I painted every wall twice. I rocked Mark to sleep in the room with the window facing the elm tree, that same room his children now used for toy storage. I buried my husband's ashes beneath the rose bush out back. That bush blooms every spring. I used to believe it was his way of saying thank you. Now my son was planning my quiet erasure, in the very walls I kept warm through decades of winters. I closed my eyes, not because I was tired, but because I needed to retreat. Into memory, into places untouched by betrayal. I remembered the day we got the keys to this house. It was raining. Mark was 6, holding his father's hand, jumping over puddles like they were fire pits. I had stood in the doorway, soaked and smiling, thinking, this will be the home he remembers, the one he'll come back to. I was wrong. They did not want me sick. They wanted me gone. I heard a chair scrape above, footsteps, then silence. I waited. 10 minutes, maybe 20. Then I forced myself to sit up. My bones ached, every joint screaming, but I moved anyway. I had done harder things. I had given birth without epidurals. I had cleaned motel toilets in 3 states while Mark was in middle school. I had survived the war years with nothing but powdered milk and canned beans. I would not die quietly. I moved to the far corner of the basement, the one with the old utility shelf. I leaned against it and let my fingers find the groove between bricks, the 4th one up from the floor, 3rd from the left, loose. I had hidden things there when Mark was a child. His slingshot, a pack of forbidden gum, once even a sparrow he tried to save. Now it held something else. An old Nokia phone. No SIM card, no service. But it could still record. I had found it during a deep clean a year ago and charged it out of curiosity. Somehow, instinct had told me to keep it close. I charged it monthly, always putting it back in the brick cavity. Now I held it like a weapon. I turned it on. The screen glowed faintly. I pressed record. The red dot blinked. If they were going to bury me in silence, I would leave them a voice to haunt them. Then I crawled back to the cot. My knees buckled. My ribs throbbed. I held the phone close to my chest. I didn't speak, not yet. I waited for them to come back, for someone to open the door, for a sound, a word, anything. It came later that night. The door creaked. I pressed the phone's button to make sure it was still recording. Mark's footsteps descended. He didn't call out. I forced myself up on one elbow. My voice cracked from thirst and dust. Mark, please, let me out. I do not want to die here. He paused at the bottom of the stairs, then laughed. "You should be thanking me, Mom. I'll make sure you get a beautiful grave. I'll even write a speech. I'll honor your legacy by inheriting every piece of it." I stared at him through the dim light. "You were always so dramatic," he muttered. "This is better. Quiet, simple. No one will ask questions. No one really saw you anymore anyway." Then he turned and walked back up the stairs, locked the door. The red light on the phone kept blinking. That night, as I lay on the cot, my joints screaming and my lungs tight, I realized something far colder than the cement floor beneath me. They were not waiting for me to die. They were killing me. And they thought they could get away with it. The basement was a coffin that forgot to close. No windows, no clock, only the sound of pipes creaking above me and the faint, steady drip of moisture from somewhere in the wall. I had spent so many years doing laundry here, storing Christmas ornaments, canning preserves in the old cabinets. But now every corner felt unfamiliar, hostile, silent in a way that screamed. The light bulb above the washer buzzed softly, the only source of illumination, just enough to cast long, twitching shadows across the concrete floor. The air was damp, tinged with mildew and something else, a faint chemical tang, like rust and mold and betrayal. The smell of rot, not of flesh, but of dignity. The door at the top of the steps was reinforced with a thick padlock. New, industrial, the kind you used for warehouses, not homes. It hadn't been there before. Mark had installed it quietly, said it was for safety when the grandkids played. He had a way of lying with a smile. There were no blankets, no food, no water left in sight. They had stopped bringing meals 4 days ago. The tray was gone, so was the small space heater. I sat in 3 layers of clothing, an old cardigan, a robe, and the oversized sweatshirt I once wore gardening. My breath steamed visibly, even in the stillness. The medications had stopped first. One by one, they'd run out. I'd asked, politely at first, then with worry, then with fear, but each time I got the same answer from Lena or Mark. "We'll pick it up tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Without the heart pills, my chest burned. Without the thyroid meds, my muscles ached and twitched. My hands had started shaking, my knees stiffened with cold and disuse. But my mind was sharp. They hadn't taken that from me. Not yet. I sat on the cot, my back pressed to the wall, counting the drips, timing them with my heartbeat. It was something I had done once before, long ago, in another war. I closed my eyes and let the memory come. I was 10 years old. A siren screamed in the distance. My mother shoved me under a wooden table. We lived near the coast, during the blackout years, and when the bombs hit a city 10 miles over, we felt it in our ribs. We huddled in the cellar, lit only by a single candle, sharing silence with spiders and canned peaches. We didn't know if we'd survive, but we stayed quiet, still, alert. I remembered the rhythm of those days, the discipline of stillness, the value of a breath. It came back to me now, like muscle memory. I would not panic, not yet. I had always thought that if I died, it would be from something slow but gentle, the way women my age often go, a tired heart, a silent stroke in the middle of sleep. I never imagined it would be from hunger, from cold, from cruelty wrapped in legal paperwork and forced smiles. My body began to tremble. Whether from fear or chill, I couldn't tell. I needed something, anything to hold on to. I pulled myself off the cot and shuffled toward the far wall. The shelf still stood, lopsided and rusted, holding cracked jars and empty paint cans. I knelt beside it, wincing at the crack in my knee as it met the concrete. The dust made my throat burn. I coughed, and my whole body jolted like a snapped wire. Then my hand touched it. A gap. A familiar one. The brick. The 4th one up from the floor, 3rd from the left. When Mark was little, I had pried it loose to hide small things. His contraband candy, his slingshot, even a secret letter he wrote to Santa after he turned 12 and pretended not to believe. Over the years, I had forgotten about it. But tonight, instinct pulled me toward it like a beacon. I dug at the edges with my fingernails. The mortar had cracked with age. I wiggled the brick until it gave way with a sigh. Behind it, nestled in a little hollow wrapped in an old sock, was the thing I didn't even dare hope for. A phone. The old Nokia. blue and silver. No charger in sight, no SIM card, no data. I had given it to my grandson once, to play games on when we babysat him. I had tucked it away in this cavity after he lost interest. A relic. A toy. Now it was a lifeline. I held my breath and pressed the power button. The screen flickered. The battery miraculously still held a charge. A sliver. A sliver was enough. The menu loaded. I scrolled with trembling fingers to the voice recorder. My hands were shaking. My eyes blurred with cold and tears. But I found the button. I pressed record. A little red light blinked. It was the first thing in this darkness that told me I still existed. I stared at that blinking light like it was the sun. I whispered, hoarse and cracked, "This is Helen Green. Today is November 22nd. I am in the basement. I have been locked in. No food, no medicine. If anyone finds this, please know I did not go quietly." The red light blinked again, and for the first time in days I felt not fear, but fight. They wanted to bury me in silence. But now, I had a voice. The phone blinked its red dot silently, waiting for truth to enter its tiny microphone. It had no SIM, no signal, but it could still remember, and that was all I needed. I placed it on the floor beside the cot, angled just right toward the stairs, the speaker open, the record function running. I curled up beside it, feigning sleep, listening to the tick-tick of my own pulse and the slow, distant creak of footsteps above. They always came down late, to check, to stare. Maybe to feel powerful, watching the woman who had raised them with nothing, now reduced to nothing herself. It was close to midnight when I heard the door unlock. Metal clinked, hinges groaned. Then, footsteps, heavy ones, slower than usual. "Mark?" He descended the stairs with a deliberate rhythm, like someone arriving at a grave they felt no guilt about. I didn't lift my head. Not at first. I let him get to the bottom step before I forced myself upright. The light from above cast him in half shadow. He didn't say a word. I did. My voice was dry, cracking at the edges. "Mark, please, I'm still your mother." He didn't move. "Let me out," I whispered. "I don't want to die like this. Please." For a second, just 1 second, I thought I saw hesitation, a flicker behind his eyes, maybe even shame, but it vanished. He walked over to the dryer, leaned on it casually, and stared at the wall like I wasn't even there. Then he spoke. "Do you know what you've become, Mom?" I said nothing. "A liability. That's what the lawyer said. An expensive, decaying liability." He turned to face me fully. "You want the truth? Fine. Here it is." He walked closer until I could see the edge of a smirk at the corner of his mouth. "You're going to die here, and it's going to be quiet and peaceful and convenient." I inhaled sharply, but said nothing. The red light on the phone blinked, blinked. Mark laughed, a short, dry sound. "You should be grateful. I'll make you a beautiful headstone. I'll give speeches, I'll cry on cue. People will think you were a saint. I'll call it the Helen Green Foundation or something. I'll even say, 'I miss you.'" He stepped back, looking me up and down like a worn-out rug. "And when they hand me the house, I'll renovate it, flip it, or keep it, who knows? Maybe Lena will turn your room into a wine bar." He looked toward the locked door, then paused. "You were always too stubborn. You had to do everything your way. Raise me your way. Fix things your way. Even die your way." I found my voice. "I loved you." He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. "I loved you, Mark. I gave up everything for you." "Yeah," he said, voice sharpening. "And look where it got us." He turned and climbed the stairs, each step louder than the last. Before he reached the top, he added, almost like a signature, "Don't worry, I'll make you famous. You'll be worth more dead than you ever were alive." Then the door slammed. The lock turned. Silence. Except for the red light, still blinking. I reached for the phone with trembling hands, pressed stop, saved the file. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the confirmation tone. But I saw it. Recording saved. I collapsed back onto the cot. I was still in the dark, still trapped, still freezing. But now I had something he did not. The truth. The first hour after the door closed was the worst, because that was the hour I believed he might come back, that he might unlock the door, change his mind, regret what he said. bring water. Say it was a cruel joke, a moment of anger, a test I passed just by surviving. But he didn't. Not after the first hour, not after the 10th, not after the first full day. I had no way to count time except by pain, the way my body ached when I woke up, if I had slept at all, and the way the cold crawled deeper with every passing minute. There was no food except for a single half-crushed granola bar I found behind the shelf. I had left it there months ago during a cleaning binge. It was stale, partially unwrapped, but it tasted like salvation. Water was harder. The basement walls sweated with condensation. I found a rusted aluminum pot in the corner, once used for dyeing old curtains. I placed it beneath the trickle near the laundry machine, a crack that we'd never bothered to patch properly. By the second night I had maybe half a cup. I sipped it like it was wine. I wrapped myself in anything I could find, a curtain, a sheet of old painter's plastic, even bubble wrap from storage. Still, the cold was like a second skin. My fingers turned purple at the tips, my lips cracked. I started hallucinating on the third night. Voices from the ceiling, flashes of light that weren't there, the smell of my husband's aftershave. I knew then I would not survive another day, and so I decided not to wait for death. I decided to escape. There was a vent on the far wall, small, rusted shut, but I remembered it. I had once told Mark, when he was 8, that it was too small for monsters to crawl through. He had nodded solemnly and fallen asleep with his hand in mine. That vent led to the crawl space, and the crawl space, if I remembered right, led to the old coal chute that had been sealed from the outside but not from below. If I could get to it, I could pry loose the panel. I crawled on all fours, my knees raw, my breath shallow. The vent grill was held by 4 screws, rusted, brittle. I needed leverage. There was an old workbench nearby, on it a pile of forgotten tools. Screwdrivers, paintbrushes, a hammer with a cracked handle. I tried the screwdriver, but the metal bent at the tip. Then I saw it. A broken piece of wood from a busted chair leg. Thick, jagged, sharp. I wedged it under the bottom of the vent grill and pushed. Nothing. I pushed harder, using the weight of my hip. The wood snapped. But the corner of the grill bent. That was all I needed. I repositioned. Pushed again. This time something cracked. The bottom 2 screws popped loose, metal shrieking like an animal. I stopped to breathe, heart racing. The top 2 gave way more easily, weakened by years of neglect. The vent swung down with a groan. I stared into the black hole. Cold air leaked through, dirt, cobwebs, darkness. I climbed in. The crawl space was tight. I had to lie flat, inch forward like a worm. My elbows scraped against brick, my neck cramped from the angle. But I moved. Half a foot, then another. Each breath kicked up dust, dry and sharp. I coughed into my sleeve, eyes burning. 10 feet in, I hit the panel. Thin plywood, nailed from the outside. I touched the nails. Rusted, old, weak. I raised the chair leg and pounded. The first nail gave with a crunch, then the second. It took me the rest of my strength to loosen the panel. My hands bled, my lungs screamed, but when the last nail cracked free and the wood gave way, I felt wind on my face, cold, fresh, real. It was raining outside. The first drop hit my cheek like a blessing. I pulled myself through the hole, into the open air behind the house, the backyard. The roses were gone, the garden overgrown, but I was out. I collapsed onto the wet grass, mud seeping into my clothes, my hands digging into the earth like I was trying to remember how to be human. I lay there, staring up at the sky, letting the rain wash the filth from my face, the lies from my skin. I was out. I was alive, and they had no idea. I must have looked like a ghost when I stepped into the police station. Rain-soaked clothes clung to my skin, my shoes were gone, lost somewhere between the crawl space and the backyard mud. My hair, once carefully pinned each morning, now hung in tangled clumps around my face. I smelled like mildew, copper, and silence. The officer behind the desk looked up, startled. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I opened my mouth. My voice cracked. "I need to speak to someone in charge, right now." He stood, slowly. "Let's get you some water," I said. I repeated, firmer, "I have evidence. I was locked in a basement. My family tried to kill me, and I have it on tape." That got his attention. I reached into the inside pocket of my robe, still damp, and pulled out the Nokia phone wrapped in the old sock. My hands shook as I handed it over. Voice recorder. November 22nd. Play it. He took it with the gentle suspicion of a man used to unstable stories. Pressed a few buttons. The audio loaded. For a moment, all I heard was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. Then my son's voice. Cruel, clear, unmistakable. You're going to die here. Quiet, peaceful, convenient. The officer's eyes widened. Then came the rest. I'll make you famous. You'll be worth more dead than alive. He looked up sharply. Ma'am, what's your name? Helen Green. He called for backup. 2 other officers came, one bringing a blanket, the other a notepad. They moved fast after that. They led me to a back room, helped me sit, gave me tea that tasted like forgiveness. I told them everything. The missing medication, the padlocked door, the days in the basement, the crawl space, the panel. My voice trembled, but didn't break. I asked for Detective Ramirez. I remembered her from a town hall years ago, the only officer who had ever remembered my name. She came within 15 minutes. She listened to the tape twice. Then I handed her the second piece of evidence, the USB stick. They had forgotten to disable the old security camera in the floor vent above the laundry machine. I had hidden the USB in a canister, just in case, and it had caught Mark. Every word, every smirk, his full confession, plain as daylight. Ramirez stared at the screen. Her jaw clenched. This is enough to open a felony case, she said. Attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud. She made a call. A doctor came to examine me, right there in the station. Blood pressure low, heart erratic, dehydration, minor hypothermia, bruising on both knees. The physical proof that my words weren't just old woman stories. They took my statement, word for word, typed it, printed it, had me sign 3 times. Then Ramirez stood. I'm going to the prosecutor's office right now. Tonight? The younger officer asked. She didn't blink. Tonight? She left with the phone and the USB in hand. I waited in the warmth of the break room, watching the hands of the wall clock tick slowly toward midnight. At 11:43 p.m. she returned. Her coat was wet from the rain. Her face was calm, her steps firm. She placed a single paper on the table in front of me. The Commonwealth attorney just signed a 48-hour emergency detainment order. I stared at the signature. He's going to jail tonight, she said. Both of them, him and his wife. The judge will see the evidence in the morning. I felt my body sag into the chair. Not in defeat, in release. Because for the first time in days, I wasn't alone. I wore black. Not because I was mourning, but because it felt appropriate. Let them think I was a ghost. Let them believe for one more minute that I was the memory they could control, the lie they thought they buried. The memorial service was held at a rented chapel near the edge of town. Not a church I recognized, just a cold hall with rented flowers, uncomfortable chairs, and a slideshow that looped the same 6 pictures of me smiling in gardens I planted myself. I arrived 15 minutes after the program started. From outside, I could already hear the voice of the minister, gentle, rehearsed. She was a quiet soul, a mother who gave her life for her family, a woman who never asked for praise and never made demands. I stepped inside. Heads turned one by one. No one recognized me at first, thinner, paler, wrapped in a heavy wool coat. But then, someone gasped, the kind of sound you make when you see something you swore was gone forever. I walked slowly, every step louder than the eulogies. The slideshow froze on a photo of me holding Mark as a baby. He was sitting in the front row. So was Lena. They were both dressed in designer black, hands folded, expressions carefully arranged. When they saw me, Mark's face drained of all color. The minister paused, confused. A whisper ran through the crowd. She's alive. No, they can't be. I kept walking until I reached the front. Then I turned to face them all. I held up the USB drive in one hand, high like it was a gavel. I bring you evidence, I said, and something none of you brought today. The room fell silent. Conscience. Lena stood. This is insane. This woman is not supposed to be alive? I cut her off. No. I was not supposed to be anything. Not hungry, not cold, not human. Just gone. The minister stepped back. No one said a word. I was locked in a basement, I said, No food, no medicine, no light. I was left to die in silence, but I did not. I turned to face the guests, people I hadn't seen in years, cousins, in-laws, old neighbors. Some of you came for grief, but most of you came for property, for a signature, for whatever was left. Well, here's what's left. Me. Mark stood up. Mom. The doors opened. Detective Ramirez walked in, followed by 2 officers. Mark Green, she said. Lena Green. You're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. Gasps rippled through the room. The officers moved fast. Cuffs clicked. Chairs scraped back. Mark shouted, "This is a mistake! She's lying!" But no one believed him now. Not with the USB, not with the bruises on my wrists, not with a room full of witnesses. As they were led out, I looked straight at him. "You tried to bury me with lies," I said, "but I came back, with proof. I did not survive for revenge. I survived because something in me refused to die without being heard. There was still a truth inside me, sharp as broken glass and just as dangerous, that needed to be spoken, that needed to be witnessed. I told the truth, not for sympathy, not even for justice, but because silence was how they thought they'd win. And I would not leave the world on their terms. The news traveled fast, local headlines first, then regional. By day 3, national outlets picked up the story. Virginia woman declared dead, found alive. Children arrested in fraud scheme. They tried to kill me, says 78-year-old survivor. From basement to breakthrough. Helen Green's fight to be seen. I didn't watch the coverage. I didn't need to. I was there, and I had already lived the headlines. But I did keep the article someone mailed to me, laminated, underlined, a photo of me holding the USB, standing at the front of my own memorial service. The caption read, "She brought the evidence and the reckoning." In the weeks that followed, I moved into a community home. Not a nursing home. A place where people still had names, not wristbands. Where no one left you alone for hours. Where you could drink tea at midnight if you wanted, and someone would sit beside you while you did. They called me Miss Helen at first, then Helen the Brave, and eventually, the Immortal. I didn't correct them, because sometimes surviving something you were not meant to survive earns you the right to choose your name. On my second week there, I got a visitor. He was taller now, shoulders broader, hair darker, but the moment I saw him standing at the gate with that uncertain, hopeful expression, I knew. My grandson. He walked up slowly, hands in his jacket pockets. "Hi, Grandma," he said. I nodded. "Hi, baby." He looked at me, eyes full of tears and guilt and something stronger, something that had taken root in the years since I last saw him. "I remember the phone," he said. "The little blue one you let me play Snake on. I found it once in the brick, but I never knew why you hid it there." I smiled. "Now you do." He sat beside me on the porch swing. Didn't say much, just held my hand like it was something precious. "You saved me," I whispered. "You saved yourself," he said. "But I'm glad I was part of it." He visits every Sunday now. Sometimes he brings soup, sometimes flowers, sometimes nothing at all, just his presence. That's enough. As for Mark, he tried to call, from jail, from a collect line. He left messages through the prison voicemail system. He said he was sorry, that he had been under pressure, that he made mistakes, that he didn't think it would go that far. I never called back, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I didn't owe him comfort. I gave him a childhood, a college degree, a home, a chance, and when he tried to take my breath away, I chose to breathe louder. That was my answer. I sometimes think of Lena, too. Whether she regrets it, whether she whispers my name when no one is listening. But then I look around the community home, at the people who know my story not from headlines, but from my mouth. People who knock on my door just to say hi, who pass me handwritten notes, who call me by name and mean it. And I feel something close to peace. One afternoon, as I sat under the magnolia tree, a woman from the local college asked if she could record my story. "I want to teach it in my class," she said, "not as tragedy, but as proof. That voice matters. That silence is never consent." I agreed. She asked what I wanted the lesson to be. I told her this. They tried to write my ending, but I rewrote the whole story. I did not survive to seek revenge. I lived because I refused to be reduced to dust by someone else's convenience. I lived because there was still something left to say, and someone out there who needed to hear it. They buried me in silence. But I rose with truth, and no matter how many locks they turned, how many signatures they forged, or how many lies they rehearsed, they could not kill what I carried inside: memory, witness, worth. I am not a martyr. I am not a miracle. I am just a woman who remembered who she was, right when they needed me to forget. I have learned that unconditional love is not the same as blind love. One can hold you, the other can break you. I spent years believing that being a mother meant giving everything. And for a long time, I gave with open hands, open arms, and open heart. But I now understand love without limits is not devotion. It is disappearance, and I will not disappear anymore. I sit now by a window that faces the community garden. The sun leans in during the morning hours, touching the pages of the notebook in my lap. The same lap where Mark once laid his head as a child, where I once folded tiny onesies and wrote grocery lists. Now, it holds a story I never thought I would live long enough to tell. My story. Not the version they wrote for me. Not the obituary Lena tried to print. Not the speech Mark prepared for the funeral he expected me to miss, but the truth. The truth of how I was almost erased, and how I became a headline not because I was dramatic, but because I was real. I write it all down, every word, every moment, not to dwell, not to hurt, but to warn. Because I am not the only one. There are women right now, mothers, grandmothers, caretakers, sitting in quiet corners, dismissed, devalued, renamed as burdens. Women who once built homes from scratch, who gave life and watched it walk away. Women who are spoken over, forgotten. This story is not just mine, it is ours. So if you are reading this, if someone has made you feel small, useless, inconvenient, I want you to remember something that even I had forgotten. You were once someone's whole sky. And maybe, just maybe, you still are, to someone who forgot you ever existed. But you still exist. You still matter. And you are not done yet. They started writing to me. Letters, emails, handwritten notes folded into trembling envelopes. Some came from across the street, others from across the country. Women, men, even children. I saw your story on the news. I didn't believe it was real, but it felt real, because it happened to my mother too. My daughter stopped calling after I got sick. I thought it was just me. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I'm 12. My grandma raised me. I cried when I saw you. She's my hero too. I kept every letter. I read them slowly, one per night by the window, letting the words settle deep. Some brought tears, others rage. A few made me laugh out loud, the way only truth can. One woman wrote, "They said I was too dramatic, too needy, too old. You reminded me I am still here. And I don't need their permission to matter." Another, "You survived the basement. I survived the silence. Let's not be quiet anymore." So I began to write back. Not to everyone, but to as many as I could. Short notes mostly. You're still here? That means something. You are not disposable. Your story matters, even if no one claps when you tell it. One day, the director of the community home wheeled in a cart stacked with more mail than I had ever received in my life. She smiled and said, "Miss Helen, you've started something." I guess I had, without trying to. I had become a mirror for women who were told they were invisible, a mirror for the forgotten, not to reflect their pain but their power. A university professor asked if she could name her course after me. "Not after you, exactly," she clarified, shy, "but after what you represent, a generation of women who were always strong but finally allowed to be seen." I told her yes. They called it The Voice in the Basement. And still, the letters came. A woman in her 80s wrote, "My children tried to get me to sign the house over to them last year. I almost did. Then I watched you climb out of that crawl space, and I said, 'Not yet.' That one I read twice. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge, not attention. Just a single, quiet refusal to go unheard. Now, I hold monthly gatherings at the home, not therapy, not workshops. Just women, and a few men, who sit in a circle and share the truths they never thought would leave their lips. We call it Still Here, because we are, and we are not done Not even close. If this story found its way to your heart, if it made you remember someone you haven't called, or made you feel seen in a world that tries to forget quiet women like us, then stay. Here on Grandma, True Stories, we speak the truths no one else dares to say. We don't shout, we remember. We don't ask for pity, we ask to be heard. These are not fairy tales. They are the stories buried under silence and now told at last. So if you believe wisdom has wrinkles, if you believe revenge can be quiet, and if you believe that forgotten women still have something to say, then hit subscribe, turn on notifications. Share this story with someone who needs to remember they're not alone. Because when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens. This is Grandma True Stories, and this is just the beginning.